Hello, and today we will be learning about Cartesian planes. Cartesian planes, also called coordinate planes. And the Cartesian plane or the coordinate plane is very commonly used in algebra to visualize algebraic equations. Okay, so on this video, I just want to go over the basic concepts of a Cartesian plane. So if you remember, when you first started learning numbers, some of you might have used a number line that might look like this. So you start at 0, and then you go over 1, and then 2, and then 3, and 4 in this direction, and then in the other direction, it's going to be a negative, -1, -2, -3, -4. Okay, so this was the number line that we used when we started learning numbers. And a Cartesian plane basically expands this one-dimensional chart into a two-dimensional plane. So what it does is it adds another number line, a vertical number line like this. And then here, if you go up, it's going to be positive. And if you go down, it's going to be negative. Okay, and this kind of double number lines, the number lines that are perpendicular to each other, allows us to do a whole lot of different things that we couldn't do with one number line. Okay, and to explain the things that we can do with this, it's actually going to take more lessons to get there, but I just want to introduce you to the basics of using a Cartesian plane. Okay, so the horizontal line here, the horizontal line is what we call the x-axis, and the vertical line here is what we call the y-axis. And the middle point right here, the middle point, that is called the origin. It's an important point, the origin. Okay, and let me actually draw the x and the y-axis in different colors. So let me draw the horizontal x-axis in red, and let me draw the y-axis in blue. Okay, so once we have two number lines like this, not only can we define the points on the number line, but we can also define points that are outside like this. And we can define all the points that are on that plane. So how do we define this point right here? Well, the general rule for any point, or another way of saying a point on the plane, is coordinate. Okay, so when you define a coordinate, you always put the x number and then the y number separated by a comma. Okay, so let's look at this green point right here. This green point right here, what is the x coordinate? The x coordinate. So that means the red part, right? The x coordinate is right here. Okay, so from that point, just go down, straight down towards the red line and see which number it is. So it's going to be 2 for the x part. How about for the y part? You go straight across to the blue line and see what number that is. So the y part is 3, and separate those two numbers with a comma. So this coordinate is 2, 3. Okay, the x coordinate is 2, the y coordinate is 3. Okay, that wasn't too hard. Let's try another point. Let's try this point right here. What are the coordinates of that point? Again, we have to look at the x component first and then the y component. What is the x coordinate? So if to get the x-coordinate, you just go straight down to the red line. You get that it's -3. For the y-coordinate, you go straight across to the blue line, and you'll see that it's 1. And separate those two with a comma. So that would be the coordinate of this point right here. Okay, let's try one more point right here. What are the coordinates of this point? Okay, the x-coordinate is going to be on the red line, which is -2. The y-coordinate is going to be on the blue line, which is also -2. So -2, -2 is going to be the coordinate of that point. Okay, so this is how you find the coordinates of a point. Now, let's take this in the reverse order. So let's say that we have coordinate, we are given the coordinate -1, 3. Okay, can we put this coordinate on the Cartesian plane? Okay, so that is our x-coordinate, that is our y-coordinate. So it means that go -1 in the x direction. So let me define this point to be purple. Okay, this is going to be our purple point. So I'm trying to plot this point on our plane. Go -1 in the x direction. So we're here. And then go 3 in the y direction. So go up 3 from here. Okay, so -3 in the -1 in the x direction meant going left 1, and then +3 in the y direction meant going up 3 from there. So this point right here, the point that we end up, is going to be this point. Okay, let's try plotting another point. How about 2, -1? Okay, so just remember that our 2 is going to be the x-coordinate. -1 is going to be the y-coordinate. And let's use a different color. Let's use orange. Okay, so go 2 times in the x direction, +2, right? So we're going towards the right 2 times in the x direction. And then we're going -1 in the y direction. So we're going down 1 from there. So this point right here is going to be our point defined by this coordinate. This is going to be our orange point. Okay, so you can plot points on the plane using coordinates, or you can also derive the coordinates of the points on the plane. I would like to cover one more thing before we end this video. So let me draw coordinates again. Remember that this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 positive. Oops, 3, and then negative. Okay, how can we find the coordinates? Oh, yes. Before I get there though, what is remember the origin, right? This is the origin, the point in the middle. It's called origin. What are the coordinates of the origin? Well, if you look at the x component, which is the horizontal line, it's on 0 of the x component, and it is also on the 0 of the y component, the vertical line. Okay, so the origin is on 0, 0. Okay, the x part is 0 and the y part is also 0. Okay, how do we define the points on the x-axis? So for example, like this point right here. What are the coordinates of that point? Well, the x-coordinate is 2, right? It's on the 2 of the x-coordinate. How about the y-coordinate? What's the y-coordinate for that point? If you look at the vertical line, the y line, it's on the 0 of that line, right? This point is on the 0 of that line. You just have to go straight across towards that vertical line and see where it ends up. So the y-coordinate for that is going to be 0. Okay, how about this point right here? What are the x and y coordinates for that one? The x-coordinate is -1. It's on the -1 of the horizontal line. How about on the vertical line? What point does it correspond to on the vertical line? And if you just go straight across towards the vertical line, you'll see that it is 0. And you'll notice that this is going to be true for all the points on the x-axis. So this point is going to have, the x is going to be -2, the y is going to be 0. This point right here is going to be, the y is going to be -4. Oh, sorry, the x is going to be -4, the y is going to be 0. This point right here, x is going to be 4, y is going to be 0. So all the points on the x-axis, have the y-coordinate of 0. So in other words, the x-axis is the collection of all the points whose y component is 0. Okay, so all the points on that axis are going to be have a y component of 0. Now what about the points on the y-axis? For example, this point right here. What are the coordinates of that point? The x-coordinate and the y-coordinate. The x-coordinate, you have to look at the horizontal line, right? You have to go down, you have to look at the horizontal line, and the x-coordinate is 0. The y-coordinate is 2. How about down here, this point? Again, the x-coordinate, you have to look at the horizontal line. X-coordinate is 0, and the y-coordinate is -2. The vertical line, it ends up on the -2. So the same kind of characteristic is seen on the points, or of the points on the y-axis, except instead of the y-coordinate being 0, the x-coordinates are all zeros for these points. Okay, so if there's a point on the x-axis, it means that the y component is 0, or the y-coordinate is 0. If there's a point on the y-axis, it means the x-coordinate is 0. Okay, so those are some of the characteristics that you might need to know. And I'm sure you're going to learn those naturally later on as you get more familiar with this. But I mean, the earlier you get familiar with this, the better. So just remember that if a point is on the x-axis, it means the y-coordinate is 0. If a point is on the y-axis, it means the x-coordinate is 0.